North Carolina's Outer Banks, 175 miles of barrier islands and beaches, now front lines of the climate crisis. So much so, Cynthia Dowdy is picking up her home of 22 years and moving it back, retreating from the ever-encroaching waves.
We can't fight the king tides, we can't fight the nor'easters, we can't fight the hurricanes anymore. It's hard. It really is. It's very hard. And this is our home. And it's very emotional.
With very high stakes. This house, one of two swallowed up by the Atlantic after a May storm.
Wind was blowing about 30 miles an hour, and the surf was rough, but it was not a hurricane, not a tropical storm, and not a nor'easter. Yet two homes collapsed.
Shifting sands in a vacation paradise threatened by coastal erosion and sea level rise.
So you're sort of looking at a squeezing of these islands, and that leads to increased vulnerability of some of the property, not just along the edges, right? Not just those oceanfront properties, but throughout the island itself.
Dr. Reed Corbett of the Coastal Studies Institute says sea levels here are rising at record rates, fueled in part by climate change. Up a foot in the past 80 years, projected to go another foot by 2050.
The fact is as you increase sea level, you're also increasing some of those erosive processes. And so, although these two processes are separate, you can't consider one without the other.
Generally speaking, over the last couple of decades, these shorelines have been continuously and consistently eroding. These are barrier islands. Barrier islands are really nothing more than large sandbars. They are dynamic geological structures that move and sometimes disappear.
It's more about how much is it changing, how much is it rising, and what can we do about it? And that's a real different narrative than it was just 10 years ago.
In 2012, North Carolina passed a law banning the state from making policy based on predictions of rising ocean levels.
You were not allowed to use the term sea level rise in your climate predictions.
The state was in a very different place a decade ago. That was a challenging time to be a scientist in the state because I don't think scientists were really trusted.
Reality, Corbett says, has changed that.
It isn't something about what is it going to be. It is happening today.
In Dare County, manager Bobby Outen says close to a dozen homes are now uninhabitable.
Is 10 or 12 an unusual number?
It's probably more than we've had in a while.
So this year, they are once again replenishing beaches, adding sand dredged from the ocean to fortify the coastline.
If you didn't have these beaches, what would happen to the Outer Banks?
Well, there would be nothing here. There's no other reason, really. It's not agriculture or it can't be industry. And so there's no other reason for anything that you see to be here but for the beaches.
But projects like these cost tens of millions of dollars. And how long do they last? Not nearly as long as you might think.
It is buying time, but it's not a solution. It's a temporary stopgap solution.
Adding 5 to 7 years, Corbett says, before it has to be done again. Time he hopes lets the community have a different discussion.
These islands have always changed, will always change moving forward, and so the vulnerability's always been there. The challenge comes in, I think, with the amount of development that we have. We can't develop the same that we did today. That needs to be a conversation at multiple levels.
So the choices we make today can make life better for our grandchildren and great-grandchildren.
You bet. How we address climate today will influence every coastal system 30, 40, 50 years into the future.
To build a resilient future so the Outer Banks can be enjoyed by generations to come. Anne Thompson, NBC News, the Outer Banks.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.